We're here today because thousands of same-sex married couples, binational couples across the country are caught in a legal limbo right now that we think can be broken by the Department of Homeland Security acting promptly to grant petitions for green cards, that is, permanent resident visas, so that these couples will have the same rights as heterosexual couples granted by the United States Supreme Court. Very simply, with our help, many of them in Connecticut applied for visas, green cards, but were denied because at the time they applied, DOMA forbade the federal government from, in effect, treating them as married couples. Now DOMA has been struck down. The President has committed to treat all same-sex couples the same as heterosexual couples married in the states where, as in Connecticut, they are legally and validly married. And yet there is no policy on behalf of the federal government to grant these petitions and to reopen the cases where they have been denied. New applications have been accepted, but they involve fees and legal costs and time. We're calling on the federal government very simply to reopen the cases that have been denied without the costly fees and legal expenses that are entailed in new applications, reopen the existing petitions, grant them expeditiously so that these binational same-sex couples married in Connecticut will be given the same rights as heterosexual couples under current immigration laws. Petitions for spouses should be granted right away. There should be no wait, no cost, no fees, no legal expenses. Reopening these petitions makes sense as a matter of law and simple humanitarian justice. And it will spare these couples the legal limbo that now embroils them. And we're going to hear directly from them as to what their cases involve. But let me just say very simply, I've come to know many of these couples. They have the capacity to contribute immensely to Connecticut and our nation if they are granted green cards for their spouses. And Connecticut stands to gain, the country stands to gain from this very simple humanitarian and legal policy change that should be made a matter of policy. Even if there's a case-by-case granting of the petitions to reopen or new petitions, the federal government should make clear that all the pending petitions that have been denied will be reopened rather than forcing them to go through the expense and time of new applications. I want to thank them for being here. Many of them have been in my office. I have worked on their behalf, and I know they share, in fact, their feeling probably even exceeds mine, feeling of pride and excitement and joy that finally the Supreme Court has struck down DOMA, but making these rights real, making the law real for them, requires enforcement by the Department of Homeland Security that reopens these petitions as a matter of policy. And that is important, not only for them, but for our state and for our nation. And first speaking, I would like to introduce someone who's been a real leader in this area, the Policy Director for Immigration Equality, Julie Cruz. Julie?
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. And I'm sorry I had a few written remarks and I brought the wrong paper up. My name is Julie Cruz and I'm the Policy Director at Immigration Equality, which has been fighting since the early 90s to end the exclusion of LGBT people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people from our immigration system. And actually, until 1990, gay and lesbian people were barred from immigrating to the United States. They were simply barred just because they were gay or lesbian. And that terrible discrimination ended 23 years ago. But shockingly, the ban on gay and lesbian families in the immigration system continued until just 2.5 weeks ago when the Supreme Court made its ruling. And the damage caused by the unconstitutional exclusion of LGBT families from our immigration system is deep and permanent. Families were torn apart, careers were lost, elderly parents were left behind as their child was forced to leave the country. But on June 27th, the Supreme Court struck down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act. Now, gay and lesbian Americans in every state can sponsor their spouses for immigration. Immigration Equality is working with the administration to ensure that the Supreme Court ruling is implemented quickly. Many of our clients, including Kelly and Lucy, have applications pending. And we have literally responded to thousands of inquiries from couples from across the U.S. and around the world who are filing for green cards very soon. And I'm very pleased that on the day of the ruling, Secretary Napolitano announced that the Department of Homeland Security will now treat all marriages equally under immigration law. And we have seen green cards granted, which for the Department of Homeland Security is pretty much lightning speed in a matter of days. And we have seen former cases reopened. So like Senator Blumenthal, we'll keep a watch to make sure that continues to happen. But we're very optimistic and we're very much celebrating. Over 3 years ago, I met with Senator Blumenthal and several Connecticut families, including Kelly and Lucy and Bill Moore, and a couple that subsequently had to leave Connecticut and move into exile. And first in the meeting, Senator Blumenthal asked each family how he could help them, and he has been fighting for these families over the last 3 years so that they can stay together in Connecticut, usually successfully, occasionally unsuccessfully because of the unconstitutional law. After he asked each family how he could help them, he asked how he's promised to fight to change the law so that no other families would have to face this dilemma of choosing to be with their family or to leave the country they love. And I just want to take a moment to think, how did we reach this wonderful victory? And social change, including Supreme Court rulings, only comes about by changing hearts and minds. So really the reason I wanted to stand here today was to thank all of these families and to thank their advocates like Senator Blumenthal for telling their stories over and over in a way that their friends and neighbors and coworkers and even strangers could understand. So it became clear how cruel this law was. And Senator Blumenthal for 3 years has helped the families individually, but also used his bully pulpit to point out that cruelty. So Senator Blumenthal and the families here not only benefit from this victory, but they created it. So to all of them I say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so pleased for your own families to be able to be unified or reunify, and thank you for all the tens of thousands of other families that Immigration Equality has served. There's more work to be done. As we celebrate the huge victory for LGBT immigrant families, we must remember that LGBT dreamers, young undocumented immigrants who are doubly vulnerable for being LGBT and undocumented, need relief. Vulnerable LGBT asylum seekers and detainees need immigration reform. And I just had to add that Senator Blumenthal is a hero for particularly fighting for dreamers and for detainees to be included in the bill that just passed out of the Senate. And he was a key fighter on that issue. So we cannot thank him enough as we all continue to fight to pass an immigration bill in the House and to make it the law of the land. So on this amazingly happy day, I say yes and yes. Yes to celebrating the victory for LGBT immigrant families, and yes to keep fighting for immigration reform that leaves no one behind, as LGBT immigrant families were left behind until just 2.5 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julie. And Julie's absolutely right. There's still work to be done. Immigration reform is necessary to help not only the dreamers, but many others who need the law to be changed so they will have full rights and a path to citizenship, which especially is important for our dreamers. And she is also right that I sought to aid these couples even before DOMA was struck down. The way we did it was to ask the Department of Homeland Security to hold in abeyance, in other words, to establish a moratorium on enforcement of deportation for the spouses of citizens who were legally married in Connecticut, same-sex couples legally married in Connecticut. Unfortunately, even after a letter that we wrote, 13 of us in the United States Senate, the Department of Homeland Security proceeded with this cruel and inhumane policy and did not hold those petitions in abeyance. We're here to say, in effect, reopen those petitions and do not force these families to reapply. It has forced these families to choose between the one they love and the country they love. These American citizens deserve to have their spouses, citizens of other countries, come to the United States, the land they love. And there's no better example of it than the couples that I'm about to introduce, beginning with Gary and Sam. Gary Wanderling and Sam Conlon live in New Fairfield. Sam is a successful businessman in England, and Gary, his spouse, teaches school here in the United States. Gary and Sam.
Thank you, Senator. I left my notes in my briefcase in the back, so I'm going to just wing it the best that I can. I'm Gary Wanderling, he's my partner, Samuel Conlon, and Sam and I have been together 4 years. We applied for our application, spousal petition, post DOMA being ruled unconstitutional in Federal District 2. There was no stay on the DOMA case at that time, and what was supposed to have happened, which happened for some couples but did not happen for us, was that benefits should have been granted to us. So while Customs accepted our application for meeting all the requirements and set up the appointments for the benefits such as Social Security and travel papers and things like that, they were subsequently denied within a matter of days of us going to those appointments together. We then reapplied again, and that was also accepted and then subsequently denied again with days prior to. So Sam and I have, while not been fighting as long as a lot of people have, our situation is a little strange in the sense that we applied after, and even with the Senator's request for our petition to be held in abeyance, that was still denied. So it's extremely disheartening to hear of cases being reopened when those cases were denied even prior to DOMA in Federal District 2, while we applied after and were entitled to those benefits pending the Supreme Court ruling. So we have been somewhat disappointed in that there has been no response on our cases in when they will be opened. Reestablished is very successful. As Julie said, it's a short time frame, 2.5 weeks. It's a wonderful accomplishment on their part and people who have been fighting much longer than Sam and I have. But to have been denied rights that you were legally entitled to, and then to have them asked to be held off, and then to still have those rights denied was extremely disappointing. And to not have any word, as the Senator said, to be left in this kind of limbo, while DOMA falling was a very successful and a happy day for us. Since then, we've had no news whatsoever. I teach, and I left my classroom with the condition of not knowing if I would have to be taking a leave of absence for next year to not return to meet a residency requirement in the UK if DOMA was not struck down. But since DOMA has been struck down, while I know I will be able to return to my school, and my students are very happy about that. What Sam and I can do tomorrow or over the next month and a half, we have no idea. Like many people, we've had personal and financial losses. Sam and I, prior to this, had pursued some other options, and we were defrauded by an attorney for over $300,000. So it's extremely frustrating to have pursued things the legal way and to have the law let us down in the process. And the response of the government since to not immediately address our cases and individuals behind us is disheartening and rather frustrating, for lack of a better sense, of what to do with planning. So while we are grateful, we would like, as the Senator said, for Customs to reopen, revisit our cases. As Julie said, green cards have been issued. It's wonderful to see our friends and hear that their cases have been reopened and policies and benefits, are being given to them. But to look and see that our two applications, are still in a no status land is a little disheartening, as I said, frustrating for planning purposes. So we'd like to be able to start our life. As I say to everybody, we'd like to be able to plan beyond yesterday. We've been married for almost 2 years. We've been together for 4 years. I know many marriages that have lasted a quarter of that time. And I don't think that there's not one couple here and family that would go through what we've all gone through to show the dedication and love and commitment to ourselves and our family. We are very lucky to have support of our elected officials. I'm very lucky to have support of my school district. We are extremely lucky, Sam and I, to have support on both families' side. His family understands that he is somewhat trapped here now in the United States, and we would like to be able to have that ability and those rights to us as soon as possible. So, thank you.
What is your status in the UK? Or what would it be?
What? Excuse me?
What would be your status in the UK?
England recognizes the Connecticut marriage license. So as of when we were married, we submitted our marriage license to the British Embassy, and they in return issued the British equivalent.
Right, so you wouldn't be having this problem if you were living in
No,
England?
sir. No, sir.
But the struggles we have over there is that Gary can't teach in England. The qualifications are completely different. He'd have to go back to school for 3 years before they'd let him take up his career again there. So,
and you're able to run your business from here?
My skills are transferable over here. I can run my business here as easily as I can in the UK, whereas his would require complete re-education. So,
And a loss of my time, also 20 years in the district.
Sure.
I would lose those kind of benefits that I put in. And it's tough to make
We
community.
move on.
Yep.
because,
So, thank you.
We have a couple of other couples. I'm proud to introduce Kelly Ryan and Lucy Truman. They met in Scotland in 2000. They married in Connecticut in 2010. They both have degrees, PhDs in immunology, and literally they had their bags packed also to return to England when DOMA came down, but they are awaiting a ruling on their petition, which is still, again, in limbo. So Kelly and Lucy.
Thanks, Senator.
Hello, I'm Kelly Ryan.
My name is Lucy Truman, and I'd just like to say how pleased we are to be here with you, Senator Blumenthal. You've been a fantastic champion for us and for our case, and for many, many thousands of immigrants look to you for your leadership and guidance, which has been a great support during the last few years. So we come from Newtown, Connecticut, is where we live now, and I can't say how happy I am to know that I can stay here, and that will be my home. Kelly and I are both scientists. We met at Edinburgh University in Scotland, and we fell in love. And about 13 years ago now was we met, and we got married in the UK. And then Kelly was recruited by Boehringer Ingelheim
a company in Connecticut, at Ridgefield, to work for them, and I followed on shortly afterwards to work for Yale University. So we're deeply committed to staying in Connecticut. And very soon after Kelly got her job here, I came over on a temporary work visa. And really, the moment that my foot hit the ground in this country, we knew that time was ticking, and we knew that this visa was only temporary, and we'd have to seek some kind of permanent solution.
So we have been knowing that Lucy's visa would expire one day. We tried to do everything we could to try to stay together. In 2010, we got married in Connecticut, in Newtown, Connecticut. And shortly thereafter, we applied for submitted a green card application, a spousal-based petition for Lucy to stay. We reached out to Senator Blumenthal, who was a great champion for us, and asked for that green card to be held in abeyance so that we could have some temporary relief. So asked for that green card to not be denied. Unfortunately, it was denied, and so that option was taken away from us. We then joined in a lawsuit in partnership with Immigration Equality to challenge the constitutionality of the Defense of Marriage Act. And as we all know, the Supreme Court ruling came about just a couple of weeks ago on a different case, but that impacted us as well. And as we found ourselves waiting for that decision to come down, we found ourselves only 4 days away from having to put Lucy on a plane to go back to the UK because her visa was about to run out. So it was really very much down to the wire for us, and it's difficult to overstate the impact that this ruling has had on us, and we're so glad it went the way that it did, and that Lucy is here with us today. Otherwise she wouldn't be. So it's difficult to overstate the impact on us, but it doesn't just impact us. There are so many couples that this ruling impacts, other binational couples, other same-sex couples, and other immigrants as well that need to be addressed.
The first time I met the senator was with our friends Adam and Philippe, and they are now living in exile in the Czech Republic. And we also met our friends Gudrun and Fran, and Gudrun is here today, but Gudrun has been living in exile in Vancouver, Canada, and now, because of the ruling, she's allowed to come back, and we're so happy to share that happiness with us. And as I said, we knew the time was ticking, and my time was almost out. And
we
had
thought
4
we
days.
might be next to leave. Yeah.
And we're so glad to be here. And having experienced that insecurity, the not knowing what your future is going to be, I can only reach out to you to think how it would be if you were a child, if you were growing up in this country and lived your whole life in this country. How could you plan if you didn't know that if you didn't know you could stay, if you thought that you'd have to leave? And while I'm celebrating with Kelly, and we're joyful about this, and very grateful to Senator Blumenthal, I'd love to know, and my joy would be complete, if we could tell that immigration reform was going to go through the Congress, and that the life of people who are in asylum or exile or dreamers could be made better. And we know that you've been a champion of their cause, Senator. I just wanted to say how glad I am that you were sticking up for them too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As Lucy and Kelly mentioned, some couples have been forced into exile. And in a sense, speaking for them, I'm going to ask Bill Moore, whose daughter Lisa met her Canadian partner Vanetta 14 years ago while working in San Francisco. They married, and they wanted to start a business in the United States. Unfortunately, they had to leave at that point because the United States refused to grant them equal rights with heterosexual couples. Marriage equality now is the law of the land, but still for them is not a reality. And Bill, if you could speak about your daughter.
Thank you. At the risk of some repetition, let me say good morning and tell you I am Bill Moore, and my wife and I do have a wonderful daughter, our only child, who for 16 years has been in a loving and committed relationship with a wonderful Canadian woman. She has chosen to live in Canada in order to remain with her partner, but she's living in exile. So prior to the repeal of DOMA, her choice was between living close to her parents, but apart from the one she loves, or leaving her parents and her country in order to be with her life partner. Now, with the repeal of DOMA, she and so many other members of binational gay and lesbian couples are being allowed to remain with their partners in the United States. A weight has been lifted from my shoulders, knowing that our daughter now has the right to return home. However, while we celebrate, I want us to remember we are still in the midst of a prolonged struggle to address the plight of many others who are either separated from or facing the possibility of being separated from their families, namely the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in this country. As we celebrate what we have gained in recent weeks, I want us to be ever mindful that all families belong together. On the issues of DOMA and immigration reform, we want to thank Senator Blumenthal for listening so thoroughly to the stories of those affected. He has been a courageous advocate for us, and knowing that he understands and supports our concerns has been a source of great comfort to all of us throughout this entire process. Thank you, Senator, for your courageous leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. Our final speaker this morning is on behalf of another couple, Gudrun Scheffler and her wife, Francesca Martin, met 13 years ago on a trip to the United States. She is a German national. After years of living apart, she received a work visa to teach German in the Cheshire public schools. But when her visa expired in 2012, she was forced to leave the country and has been living in Vancouver apart from her wife. My hope is that they can be reunited as a result of their DOMA petition, their immigration petition being reopened now.
Thank you. Yes, hello. My name is Gudrun Scheffler, and I'm from Germany. And I brought my spouse, Francesca, with me, and because she unfortunately couldn't be here today with us. We met as, first I want to thank you, Senator Blumenthal, very much for being such a great advocate for our families. As he said, we met 13 years ago. Francesca has been living in New Haven for about 30 years, and 13 years ago I came to visit. It happened to be New Haven. It happened to be a party for my birthday, and we met and fell in love. And then first we had a very long-distance relationship between Connecticut and Germany. And when I came, it was on a student visa, and then eventually, and of course I had to go back to school because my teaching credentials were not, when you change countries, you kind of have to start from scratch. I went back to school, also in New Haven at Southern, and then I was able to get a job in the teaching German in the Cheshire public school system, which was wonderful, and I was able to teach there for 7 years on a visa, which was unfortunately, like these visas are, they are temporary. And so that's when my clock was ticking last year at this time, and I had to leave the country last year in August. So first I went back to Germany, but then we had already decided that the neighbor to the north would be a very suitable place for us to live, and we planned to relocate to Canada. And so right now I'm visiting here. I'm on a visitor visa, and I'm in Canada going back to school to get credentialed there. And the plan was for Francesca to join me there. And now, of course, we are very, very, very happy that the DOMA was finally struck down. And that means that I can come back, and that we are in the process of working on a green card application. So we're thrilled, and we're really thanking Senator Blumenthal and Julie and all our friends and everybody who worked on this, because it's just, we're just really happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, great.
You have Francesca's permission for this.
I didn't ask her.
You do now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Let me just say I'm very grateful to these couples for being here today. I must tell you, their courage and their love are part of what inspired me to fight for immigration reform and for the repeal of DOMA. When I first met them, which was very shortly after I was sworn in, I was so deeply moved by their courage and strength and their love for each other and their love for this country. And the choice, it's a false choice between country and love, should not be the law of the land, nor should it be the practice of this country, the greatest in the history of the world. And that's why I'm especially proud to be here today. So happy to take any questions.
Before we get to those questions, Gruden, Francesca is an American citizen, right? And just couldn't be here. That's all. Right.
She just couldn't be here today.
Right. Okay.
Yes,
I was a little confused about that.
Yes, she's an American citizen. She grew up in New Jersey. She has lived in New Haven, Connecticut for 30 years, and she has worked all over the state here with a lot of state.
She just decided because of the situation she would live in Vancouver because they would accept you.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. I got it now.
Yes.
Can somebody tell me how many couples in Connecticut are in the same boat? Do we know, approximately?
We don't know precisely. We have never known precisely. And when you say in this boat, it's a boat that it's really a number of different boats. We have worked on behalf of a number to hold in abeyance their petitions. But there are also countless others who haven't come to my office and still others who haven't petitioned.
But the department is granting them. What you're requesting is that they just speed it up.
Well,
right?
It's more than that. Speed it up, but also have a system-wide, consistent policy that people do not have to apply as though they were doing it for the first time. Right. As you've heard, all of these couples have petitioned for green cards for their spouses.
Right.
Those petitions were denied. We're saying reopen those petitions so they don't have to pay lawyers thousands of dollars. You've heard about that. Right. Application fees are, again, expensive, and the additional time of starting from scratch. If they reopen the petitions, they can grant them literally tomorrow.
Heterosexual couples are routinely approved.
Routinely approved
And have
as a
been
matter
for
of law.
decades, right?
Exactly. That's the whole point here, is that heterosexual couples are routinely approved because they have a right to it under the law. And heterosexual couples now have that same right. They should not be forced to jump through additional hoops or file new petitions for permanent residency status.
Steve Kochko is in here, I'll say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.